Hi, my name is Joe Jackson. I'm a journalist, author, interviewer, broadcaster, and podcaster. And this is the third of 3 podcasts I've uploaded. The first is a repost, since I got the terrible news 2 days ago that Shane MacGowan had died. Most of my peers in music journalism have written their tributes to Shane, but my response, as with how I reacted earlier this year to the death of Sinead O'Connor, for example, is to go back to the cassette tapes of the interviews we did and let the interviewee in question speak for themselves. Whenever I publish my interviews or broadcast them on radio, I always make a point of leaving the last word to the person I was interviewing. And now, I guess I'm doing much the same thing, maybe as a response against death. And certainly, meaning to suggest that the voices of the likes of Sinead and Shane and their spirits will linger long after their passing. This brings us to where we pick up the last section of the conversation I had with Shane in the tea rooms of the Shelbourne Hotel in Dublin in October 1994, not December, as I stated in the first podcast. And it was done, this conversation was for my weekly Irish Times interview. Listen, I don't know about you, but ever since I was 14 or so and realised that a song by Elvis Presley called Lonely Man seemed to be able to articulate better than I could feelings I had, such as the loneliness after my parents parted, music has spoken for me from a core level. Some of Shane's songs do that for me, as they do for millions of people, one of whom was, at the time of this interview, Christy Moore. It probably still is. And I told Shane that, hoping to find out what singers and songwriters and writers and artists did that for him.
I interviewed Christy, and in the Times he said you speak for him. That you're Christy Moore. He said you give a tilt to a lyric or a worldview that speaks for something he can't say. So who says that for you? You know what I mean? He felt.
I don't know what you mean, though.
Christy feels that your view on the world, your view on love, on relationships, it comes from just the tilted angle that he identifies with. You know, and it's not straight down the line.
Yeah.
So it can be a twist you give a lyric, which seems to be very gentle and poetic, and then you give it that tilt of humour. You know what I mean? And Christy said, wherever he's singing from, I feel it in there.
Yeah.
So what I'm asking you is, who does that for you, or who would do that for you? Oh, it doesn't have to be singers, obviously. It can be a writer.
Oh, I suppose Lou Reed
Yeah.
would be one, yeah. Ronnie Drew,
Yeah.
you know, and Luke Kelly when he was
Right.
around. Hendrix is always very special to me.
Yeah.
Still is very special
Right.
to me. A lot of great jazzmen, you know, like Charlie Parker,
Yeah.
and, Train,
Yeah.
and you know, the Blue Note catalogue sort of thing.
The Blue Note Catalog. Yeah.
And like, and also sort of like great rock and roll singers like, and soul singers like, which are singer-songwriters like Sam Cooke and
Yeah,
people like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know.
Who's
Smokey?
Smokey Robinson? Yeah. As Dylan called him, one of the best pop poets.
What?
Dylan called him one of the best pop
Much
poets.
better pop poet than Dylan.
Think so? Yeah. Why? Because he's purer. It's a purer line.
Because he's good.
Yeah. But you don't appreciate Dylan as the so-called greatest song poet of our generation and every other generation? No. Okay. Well, what to you is poetry in a lyric?
I don't think about
Do you
things
not?
like that. You know, I think all this poetry thing is.
I don't mean poetry as.
Excuse me, pretentious.
All right. Well, maybe I meant just poetic or truthful. That's what we're talking about, the music who moves you at that level. If the word poetry is wrong for it. I mean, when a lyric works on that level, if Dylan's doesn't, can you easily identify what makes it work?
It doesn't have to be a lyric. I mean, like although Hendrix did write great lyrics, he spoke with his guitar as well. You know what I mean?
And Coltrane speaks.
Train and partner, they didn't write lyrics at all.
Sure,
You know
sure,
what I mean?
sure.
They spoke with their horns. You know.
Right. Yeah. So
And there's loads of other guys that did, you know what I mean? Like, and then there's people like Elvis and other great rock and roll singers and black and white. You know?
okay. So you don't like the
It's essentially mundane lyrics, you know what I mean? And but by their performance, you know, made you fine finger, you know.
Sure.
You in the
Yeah,
gut, you know
yeah.
what I mean? And the rest of it.
Yeah. So the word poetry is wrong for that. I think a pretentious way to describe it. So when your lyrics are thus described, do you just say pain in the arse? That's not what they're about? Because a lot of people do say that about your lyrics. Do you not like them being thus described as?
Well, no, there's the lyrics, you know.
All right.
I mean, the poetry is something you read or recite, you know.
Right.
You can recite it with music in the background, but lyrics are
To be sung.
or to be sung
Yeah.
along to the melody of the music. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. It's a different discipline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally different thing. I'm a musician,
Yeah.
songwriter,
But
and
isn't
singer.
but isn't that a tendency of, and songwriters have quite rightly complained about that the sense of your song is judged too much on what the words are saying, and people don't analyze the maybe the music, the performance, the projection, you know, all those other things.
Well, it doesn't worry me, you
Doesn't
know.
it?
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you know, I mean, people like my music. That's all I know. You know, lots of
Right.
people like my music, and like why they like it is totally.
But Shane,
it's got like, you know.
yeah.
But they've all got their own reasons to like it. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I think the sort of the universal reason they like it is because it's honest and it hits you in the gut and the heart and the feet. You know what I mean? And
Sure,
it doesn't
yeah.
hit you. It doesn't. It's nothing. It doesn't hit you in the intellect. You know what I mean? You know?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
that isn't what popular music is about. You know. In fact, I don't think that's what music is about.
Right.
In fact, I can't stand. I don't think I think intellect is the most overrated
Aspect of
aspect of the human
condition.
physiology.
Yeah,
or
yeah,
whatever. You know?
yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
your intellect is the thing that holds you down and traps you, you know,
Right,
and
right.
inhibits you.
Right. Which is more and more being applied to something like music. You're almost saying this part, you know, the deadening process we were talking about earlier in terms of the corporate concerns and all that. You're also seeing music being analysed almost out of existence in ways. I've been taken on courses. It's now in college. You know, it's almost been nailed down. And certainly, I don't think when Elvis started or Little Richard, they would have anticipated that their songs were going to be part of college courses all over the world. So maybe that's part of what's happening wrong too.
Yeah, well, we all know where the real blame lies, you know, and that's with fucking over-intellectual rock critics. And
Right.
Like, you know, like who write articles which are more about themselves than they are about the music. You know what I mean? Or the people who make the music. People want, when they read articles about musicians, they want to hear what the musician has to say about the music, and they want to hear what the musician has to say about this, that, and the other. Right? They don't want to hear what the critic has to say. You know what I mean? You know, I mean, like, so therefore the critic is just jerking off. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I mean, like, I think a good journalist asks questions, records the answer, and then transposes that to print, or
Right.
whatever, you know, without chopping it up and editing it and taking things out of context.
Has this happened to you, or are you anticipating this is going to happen with this interview? Does this happen to you all the time?
I'm not anticipating it with this interview.
All right, but does that...
I'm not having a go at you.
I know, fair enough. But I want...
Irish journalists, in fact, are usually very good, with the exception of a couple of people that we mentioned earlier on,
Yeah.
And Irish journalists, I find, are just much better.
Right. But it is an element of jerking off on behalf of the journalist to think he knows more about the music you've created than you know, isn't it?
Well, obviously, yeah.
But obviously, they don't all see that, and I agree with you.
Yeah.
You know, cause even I as a journalist, I see it.
It's not my job to teach them, you know.
Sure, yeah. No, I know what you're saying. I see too much of that.
It's my job to fucking just do what I do.
Yeah.
And like, you know, when will I ever learn, basically.
Right. Okay.
Hi, Joe Jackson here again. I thank you for listening to this edition of Joe Jackson Interviews podcast. If you want to read the article I wrote out of that conversation, check out my website, joejacksoninterviewer.com.